John Morgan and Jason Bailey, both present by phone call. The rest of the aldermen are
Hello,
present.
Mayor.
Yeah, can y'all hear me okay also?
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right. We will start by adopting our agenda for the meeting. One addition that we have, and you have a memo in front of you, is to advertise for a communications officer and OPD, and that will be on your consent agenda. Is there another, Ashley?
There is the addition that I forwarded to you earlier about the budget reallocation of the software.
I'm sorry. Yep, you did.
That is the only other addition I have.
Okay, and do we have that before us?
It would have been, sent in an email today to the board.
Okay, so y'all have seen that, then I'm going to just, can I add that to the consent, or is that?
I think it probably needs to be a separate.
Okay, let's do that at 10A. Okay, so with the addition of 10A and with the addition of letter R to the consent agenda to advertise for a communications officer, do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you. A quick mayor's report tonight, as most of what we have been dealing with is pandemic related, and we will cover that shortly in our Serving Oxford Safely plan. But I have reported before in this meeting about our commission to redesign the state flag, and we had another meeting this morning and have narrowed it down to 5 flag designs, which we are really excited about, and we will meet again next Tuesday, and they're having prototypes made of those 5 flags now so that we can see them flying on a pole next Tuesday in Jackson. So if you are interested in giving any comment, feedback, voting on your favorite of those 5, you can go to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History website, mdah.ms.gov, and look at those 5 flag choices, and you are able to give feedback and vote on your favorite. So I hope that you all will do that. We have 2 positions that I just want to announce again. We have a position available to serve as an elections commissioner, and we have a position available on our Visit Oxford board. And so anyone who is interested in serving on either of those boards, if you will send an email, a letter of interest to cityhall@oxfordms.net, we would love to hear from you. So that is it for our mayor's report tonight, and so I'll ask the board to authorize the approval of the minutes of the special meeting on July 29th and the regular meeting on August the 4th.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'll ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'll ask you to consider the consent agenda with the addition of letter R.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next I will ask for permission to retire Kiera, one of our K-9 unit standouts from the Oxford Police Department. So do I have a motion to allow Kiera to retire from the K-9 unit?
She may want to say something.
She's, we have a resolution next on the agenda.
Oh, God.
But the first thing I need is a motion to allow Kiera to retire.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And now we will request permission for Officer Jason Dyer to adopt this retired K-9. And I have a resolution to read in Kiera's honor. Hey, oh my goodness.
Cute.
She doesn't look like she's tired to me, Jason. She doesn't look tired. Whereas Kiera has diligently served her handler, Officer Jason Dyer, in the Oxford Police Department for 3 years, and whereas she began her service in 2017 and has worked since then to become a certified tracking, narcotics, and apprehension K-9, and her work on felony cases with the Lafayette County Metro Narcotics Unit, the Lafayette County Sheriff's Department, and other surrounding agencies has been a benefit to the local law enforcement community. And whereas Kiera has been called by the staff as Lil Bit due to her joyous and sweet behavior, She has assisted her handler in the Oxford and Lafayette schools for class demonstrations, for her daily duties, and always allowing the kids to love on her. She has had several U.S. Post Office drug seizures, ensuring the safety of Oxford, the university, and Lafayette County citizens. And whereas she has participated in numerous safety and demonstration trainings to both private businesses and civic groups, ensuring citizens were prepared and educated. And whereas she made a mark on the Oxford Police Department and the entire Oxford community through her service to its citizens, and her work will be remembered for years to come. Therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Oxford express their sincere appreciation and gratitude to K9 Kiera for her work on behalf of the Oxford Police Department and the City of Oxford. And we also express our sincere appreciation to her handler, Officer Jason Dyer, who we get compliments on in just regular fashion, but for the way that he treats people when he is dealing with them in both good and bad situations in our community. And we thank you very much for representing us so well. Absolutely. So now I would ask for a motion to allow Officer Jason Dyer to adopt Kiera.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Jeff, you want to say anything?
Just that we really appreciate her. We actually got her a couple years ago from another agency that was not putting her to use. And so she is 80 years old. We've only had her for 3 years, but Jason being the handler that she knows best, we didn't want to put her back through that. It's very tough on an animal. So
Sure.
she has been definitely a proud favorite at OPD and also at my house. So
I love it.
she's been amazing and has really helped adapt what we do in the K9 program.
Yeah.
Jason, this is her
Awesome.
resolution.
Thank you, Jason.
Jason. I move we adopt the proclamation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Thank y'all for being here. Next, we will adopt a retirement resolution for Development Services Planning Department employee Judy Daniel. And I'm not excited about letting you go at all, not even a little bit. I can't even fake it. Would you like to come on up and I will read your resolution?
Where do I come?
To the podium. Yes, to the podium. Yes, you've been there before. You've been there before. We miss you already.
Yeah, I miss y'all too.
Whereas Judy Daniel has been an employee of the City of Oxford since March 1st, 2016, establishing herself as a valuable resource and respected among not only her fellow workers, but the entire Oxford and Lafayette County community. And whereas Judy Daniel, with her dedication, knowledge, and abilities, has excelled while working for the City of Oxford, where she was hired as the Director of Planning, and whereas Judy Daniel's comprehensive knowledge of planning was essential in the development of the Vision 2037 Comprehensive Plan, the rewrite of the Land Development Code, and the establishment of the City of Oxford's first Housing Commission, and whereas Judy Daniel has served as a mentor to many of her professional colleagues while working for the City of Oxford, and she has always shown a willingness to perform any task or project when needed. And whereas Judy Daniel has made a mark on the City of Oxford through a commendably high standard of service to its citizenry, characterized by the exemplary willingness, patience, and courtesy and respect for the citizens that she served. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Oxford, Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Oxford express their sincere appreciation and gratitude to Judy Daniel for her work on behalf of the City of Oxford and the community. We extend to her all the best wishes for a happy and enriching retirement. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the City of Oxford, and that a copy of same be presented to Judy Daniel on this day, the 21st of July, not really, 2020. And so we have a resolution for you and a small token of appreciation that you can place somewhere to help you remember us.
Lovely.
We will miss you being in this building more than you know. Judy has been a mentor to all of us. And she also has, she has mentored us on all things, not just planning. She has put Humpty Dumpty back together quite a few times. And she helped this rookie mayor figure it out in the first year that was just so difficult. And Judy, I could not have done this job without you. And you have gotten us to a point where you have left such capable people that you have trained to carry on your good work. And I just can't thank you enough for how much you've loved this community, and I hope you know we love you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I say two
You
little
can
things?
say whatever you want to say.
First of all, it's the first time I've ever been spread across minutes. I'm so excited. I'm really retired if I'm spread across the minutes.
That's right.
Number two, I'm not going away. I'm certainly going to be serving this community in multiple volunteer capacities as soon as one can.
That's right.
Number three, it was extreme joy for me for this to be my last full-time career position. To have fallen into this, the way it all fell into place was lovely. The people I worked with, this extraordinary staff in our department and other departments, it made it a joy. So thank you. It all came to a very odd conclusion. Everything's odd right now.
That's right.
But it's
It
all
is.
good. It's all good. And thank the Lord. Ben was there when you needed all that technical stuff I could not have done.
That's right. We have found a team that complements each other well, for sure.
Absolutely. So thank you all. I look forward to seeing you all again in other capacities.
Thank you, Judy. All right, could I have a motion to accept that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Me. Adopt a retirement resolution for Oxford Utilities Electric Division employee Eddie Booker. Is Eddie here tonight? He's not? Okay, I'm just gonna read this then, so that it will be entered into the minutes on his behalf. Whereas Eddie Booker has been an employee of the Oxford Utilities since December 15th, 2003, establishing himself as a valuable resource and respected among not only his fellow workers, but the entire Oxford and Lafayette County community. And whereas Eddie Booker, with his dedication, knowledge, and abilities, has excelled while working for the city of Oxford, where he worked as a journeyman lineman for Oxford Utilities. And whereas Eddie Booker's comprehensive knowledge of his job and the Oxford Utilities electric system will be deeply missed. And whereas Eddie Booker has always shown a willingness to perform any task or project when needed. And whereas Eddie Booker has made a mark on the city of Oxford through a high standard of service to its citizenry, characterized by the knowledge and understanding of the job he performed. Therefore be it resolved that the City of Oxford, Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Oxford express their sincere appreciation and gratitude to Eddie Booker. For his work on behalf of the Oxford Utilities and the community, we extend to him all the best wishes for a happy and enriching retirement. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the City of Oxford, and that a copy of the same be presented to Eddie Booker on this day, the 18th of August, 2020. It is always hard to see employees go when you think about the knowledge and experience that goes out the door with somebody that has worked for Oxford Utilities since December the 15th of 2003. You know that there is so much knowledge and experience walking out the door. So Rob, please share with Eddie how much we appreciate him and that we adopted this resolution on his behalf. Thank you. Could I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Ashley, we will do the addition at 10A. Sorry, Mark, we added that at the beginning.
Thank you. Like I said, I emailed this to y'all this morning, but it is a budget reallocation for the purchase of software and hardware for our AS400 system. We are to the point now where our software is too many versions behind. This gets all technical, so I have to kind of rely on Chris for this, but we have to be within so many versions of our tax collection vendor, Delta Computer Systems, to be able to communicate properly. Our last update was done in 2013, and it's time to do it again. The two quotes, one was $37,265, the other was $36,051. I am going with a higher quote. Chris, based on his advice, did say that it was more reliable and more, the company was more vetted for what we need it for, so he did recommend that.
And Ashley, came in my office this week saying, oh, I hate to tell you this, but it's just unavoidable. I mean, it's just one of those, You know, we talked about some of the highest things in our budget this year were software upgrades. I mean, just consistently. And so, this is another that, in order for our taxes to mesh with the other software, we don't have we're between a rock and a hard place, so.
And, you know, what really brought this to surface was the change in the House bill that was adopted that changed the interest, so.
Right.
You know, Delta is having to change it kind of statewide, so it is something that we're probably not the only ones that having to deal with this.
And for them to adjust it for our tax map, they've got to have the updated software, so. Any questions from anyone for Chris or for Ashley?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, Mark, request permission to apply for the 2020 Urban and Community Forestry Grant through the Mississippi Forestry Commission with no required match.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's our favorite kind.
Yeah, and it's, we're gonna apply for $15,000 in grants for a consultant. So, there's no cash match. They waived that because of the pandemic. So does anybody have any questions about the grant?
Consultant for.
It's to look at the, tree ordinance. We'll look through, the ordinance, and kind of look at it in terms of regional and nationally, and just kind of vet the ordinance. It was adopted in 2009, so we're gonna look at it.
So we got $15,000 to look at an ordinance?
That's what the consultant is actually 16. We have some in-kind. He's gonna have meetings he's planning on having meetings in Oxford and have community involved in the stakeholder process and present some recommendations for the ordinance. But again, there's no cash from the city of Oxford. It's fully funded by the grant, by the Mississippi Forestry Commission. And again, the tree board, we work with the tree board. This is coming from the tree board. This is what they recommended to do at their meeting.
I move that we grant permission to apply for the grant.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Mark. At this time, we are going to review the current Serving Oxford Safely guidelines, and so I waited until this point in the agenda to get Jimmy to give us our normal update of kind of where we are, numbers-wise, and I'll give you a hospital update. I visited with Bill Henning just an hour or so ago. So I will get Jimmy to kind of give us an overview of numbers. I know he's got a chart for you, and we'll go from there.
Yes, each one of you should have a chart. This is the new software package the state's instituted. It comes out on a weekly basis. This one came out on the 15th. And you can see, we did a few additions. You can see the overall numbers in each column, but then I broke it down and gave the percentage of what that age group comprises within the system. Today, we had 12 new cases for Lafayette County, which put us at 1,084. Our numbers are a little bit different than what's in the chart because of the date differences. We did have 2 new deaths today. And today on the active case list, we have 139 active cases within the community that we know of. Compared from last week to this week, last week's data that the state sent out, we had 982 cases. This week, 1,082 cases. A 9.24% increase in cases throughout the community, according to the state data.
And again,
But Jimmy, we're down from our active cases, correct?
Yes, we've actually been trending down on our daily active cases since we hit that peak about a week or so ago. We actually, the daily active cases have been on a downward trend.
and as you can see, the 18 to 29-year-old age group is 3 times higher than any other group, which I think speaks volumes about, and we've said this every meeting, I think, since March, but you know, our hospitalization rates are not, and deaths are not up, thank you, Jesus, compared to our positive cases being up, because so many of our positive cases are in that 18 to 29-year-old age group that the majority of those do not require hospitalization. So that's where we are on those numbers. Do y'all have any questions for Jimmy? And I'll go over kind of the hospital data.
And just a quick note, with today's deaths, that makes a total of 23 for our community overall.
And we do know that quite a few of our most recent deaths have come from long-term care facilities in
Correct.
town.
That's correct. The majority have been out of the long-term care facility.
All right, if you'll stay, Jimmy, because I think there are going to be some other questions as we move along. But, you know, again, I'm sure that you all probably have seen on social media, posts began again a few days ago saying that the hospitals were full, that the hospital was full and that they were turning away people at the emergency room. I am told by Bill Henning that that is not true. His description is that they are stretched but managing. And we now see daily numbers, and they're a day behind. But yesterday, and this, I'm probably going to give you more information than you ever wanted to know, but I like to err on the side of at least letting people know what it is that we are evaluating. Yesterday, Baptist Hospital reported 181 total staffed beds. There are 217 beds at the hospital. And 181 staffed beds means that's how much staff they had there. That's how many people they could have accommodated to consider themselves at capacity, was 181. Bill has shared with me over the past month or so that they had been having some staffing issues because some of their staff, they were not finding that they were getting the virus at the hospital in the course of their work, but had been on vacations, and several of them going on vacations together and coming back and being sick. So they had been having a challenge of keeping 217 beds staffed. So yesterday they had 181 beds that were staffed. Of those beds, 41 had patients that were COVID related, and they had 39 beds that were available yesterday. So 39 beds that were open and available to be staffed yesterday. We have 24 ICU beds that are always ICU beds. Yesterday, there were 10 patients in ICU that were in there as a result of COVID, and there were 7 in there for non-COVID related issues, and there were 7 beds available in ICU, okay? What I have, the way that I understand it, and Bill Henning and I talk very often, and you know, it may be that ICU beds may be full in the morning because of a surgery, because of different things, but he said it's not that it changes daily, it changes by the minute. So they also can hold patients who need ICU care in the emergency room. They also have another opportunity to convert about 40 beds that are in their outpatient surgical portion of the hospital, not the outpatient surgical center that's separate from the hospital, but inside the hospital that could be converted quickly. They said that they have not turned away anyone from the emergency room, nor do they have any plans to. I've seen that reported on social media that people have been turned away from the emergency room. Bill Henning confirmed to me that that was not at all the case and not the case moving forward. He said that there have been a few times that they did not accept some transfer patients from surrounding area hospitals who didn't necessarily have to be transferred but would have liked to have been, but they wanted to be sure they were holding beds open, so they didn't allow those transfers. But anyone that has come to the emergency room has been welcomed in. He said that as they are watching the positive results trending down and determining how does that translate into hospitalization numbers, that what they have seen is that as the test trend improves, hospitals are about 2 weeks behind that and seeing a decrease in their patient load. And we're about 10 days out from when the decrease in positive cases statewide started. So you would anticipate that by the end of this week, and I hate to be the wet blanket, but I'm telling you, I think that's part of this job description. But, you know, I'm not sure, and I don't think the hospital is sure if that will translate accurately here when we got about 10 or 15,000 new residents over the past week. So I don't want to mislead that we anticipate a large drop, you know, in a week. We may or may not see a decrease, but as we just added 10 to 15,000 new Oxonians in the past 7 to 10 days, I think it will take us a little longer to see how all of that is going to shake out. Does anybody have any other questions hospital related? Okay, so a few things that I would ask you to consider tonight with your Serving Oxford Safely guidelines. And I asked Jimmy to have some information together on some of these things. We've gotten quite a few questions about playgrounds. Numerous people saying, can't we reopen the playgrounds? So I want Jimmy to kind of give an update on what his opinion is there.
Yeah, on the, looking at all the data for CDC and also the American Pediatrics Association, is they recommend opening playgrounds very slowly and very cautiously. They can be opened, but social distancing's got to be maintained, the disinfecting's got to be maintained, and also the CDC is saying that kids on the playground, 2 years old, 2 and above on age, need to be wearing a mask because of the interaction amongst the kids. And everything, and also have limits on the number of kids allowed on a playground to help with the social distancing and the other factors. And also stressing with the parents, if you do go to a playground, to have sanitizer with you, to clean the equipment, but also to do the hand sanitizing after they get through playing.
Right. One parent that I spoke with about reopening the playground said, well, if y'all would just do your usual cleaning. Well, hate to tell you, we don't clean the playgrounds. I mean, the rain does occasionally, the sun hopefully kills some things, but that we don't have the staff to clean playgrounds. You know, we power wash them occasionally, but that's not a daily thing. And so, you know, I would ask Jimmy your advice on, you know, I know it's outdoors and I know that it's raining on it and the sun's shining and what have you, but I don't want the public to have the false perception that we are out there sanitizing the playgrounds, because that won't happen. But it may be that they, you know, I've seen kids on the playgrounds, so I know that they, you know, there are some that are already participating in playing on the playgrounds. We are also not going to have people there to count numbers and to enforce, okay, little Johnny, you've got to go because
And that's
Jimmy's
where the
here to
personal
get out. Yeah, I mean, you know, but it's kind of a, the parent can make that decision and carry wipes to wipe down the swing and let their kids swing and what have you. So that, I just want to throw that out. I don't want the public to misconstrue that we're cleaning the playgrounds, because we're not.
Yeah. My recommendation is the smaller playgrounds that have the newer equipment, they're easier to clean, easier to sanitize, is we could put some rules in place for those. The big one at Avants Park, though, it has enclosed areas, it has hidden areas, it's gonna be harder to clean, and the kids could actually be in closer contacts confined in that one. I would say leave that one closed, but open the other ones up would be my recommendation with the safety measures in place.
Yeah, I agree with Jimmy that would be difficult to wipe down.
Yeah,
You know, there's all
that's not
kinds
really
of
possible yet.
crannies, and it's hard to keep track of kids in that playground. They're everywhere, and
It's got tunnels and castles and everything else.
Yeah, I've heard from several parents when I have said, oh, I just, you know, it makes me uncomfortable thinking about how many kids could touch that every day, and there's really no way that we can sanitize it. And, you know, their argument has been, well, can I decide that for my kid? You know, and I think there's a lot of merit to that, you know, that they want to be able to take their kid to play on the playground, and, you know, will sanitize as they see fit. But my whole, you know, I just want to make sure, I've said it 4 times now, I know, but the city will not be sanitizing all of the playground equipment because we don't have the people to do that.
Right.
So know that as you decide. Yes, Rick?
Are the schools opening their playgrounds?
I don't know the answer to
That I
that.
don't know the
They are.
answer to.
they are. But they have areas for the group. They go as a group, like the first grade, a certain first grade class will go to the playground, and they have a designated area. And then I guess they clean it before another group comes in, but I saw that on the website.
That is the CDC recommendation, is to keep the groups cohorted together. And then after one group leaves a playground, this is in their school guidelines nationally, then it gets cleaned by either the teachers of the incoming group or whatever like that.
Yeah, but, just for us to say all the playgrounds are open, it would be the same thing as us saying, you're responsible for your own body, and all the students who want to have parties of 100 can do it. I mean, we're here to try to set guidelines that are safe. And I think what you're talking about, Jimmy, as far as the smaller playgrounds, I mean, those are manageable and you can wipe down. And you can also see where your kid is in the
Right.
smaller
They're open so you can see, and if there's more than one kid there, you can see if
Yeah.
they're,
So let's list where those are. I mean, if y'all are going to determine which ones are and aren't
Yeah.
open, let's make a list there so that we can publicize that.
You know, I'm not that familiar with all of the playgrounds, but I'm very familiar with Bailey Branch, and that's one that I think is manageable.
and the one at,
Skate
the
park.
Skate park, the one at the, above the activity,
Rivers Hill.
Stone Park.
So,
Stone?
I do have a question. So I know, Mayor, you've made a good point to say that we are not gonna be cleaning these, but at the same time we're saying that, we're saying they need cleaning.
Yeah.
So who's gonna be cleaning them?
You know, the comment that I made was that if a parent wants to take their kid and put them in a swing, I would assume they would take some Lysol wipes and wipe the swing. I mean, that's what I would do, wipe the swing down and let my kids swing,
Okay.
and I'd wipe it out, wipe the handle
Correct,
or whatever, all when I got them out. I
And
mean,
I believe that's the CDC's point on saying the liberal use of hand sanitizer and washing your hands after you get through with the equipment, because kids are gonna touch their face.
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think the parents that take their kids would be responsible for wiping down
Okay.
whatever equipment they were gonna let their, yeah, and I think the masks are an important key there too, so.
I mean, you know, if it's one kid and one parent at the playground, then, okay, the mask would not be an issue, but if other kids and other parents show up, then that's where more than one family group is there, then it's gotta be masked.
So what's your pleasure, board?
Your name again, real quick?
Well, I can name you the ones, Seth, help me here. I know we've got a playground at Bailey Branch, at the skate park, Rivers Hill, Stone Park.
Price Hill, you include the exercise equipment next to the tennis courts.
Yeah, I
Price
think
Hill.
so. I think that would include the exercise. Garden Terrace, I can't think of the name, yep. And the exercise equipment that is on the walking trail that's, you know, by the OPC Activity Center.
People use that all the time anyway.
Well, they're using all of these, I think. I mean, so is the picture I'm getting is that you're okay with everyone except Avent Parks Playground?
Yeah.
Y'all? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to that effect? Because our current plan reads that all playgrounds are closed, so I need a motion to change the plan.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, so playgrounds, and Greg is not here, is he? Is Greg out there? No? Okay. The next question would be regarding bathrooms at the parks. Those remain closed as well. I think it's difficult to open the playgrounds without opening the bathrooms, but I also think it's impossible. I mean, our cleaning of bathrooms at all of our parks is once a day. And that's, you know, our staff is not going to be able to increase that and try to get things caught back up from the past few months. So if we open bathrooms, know that we are opening them with the staff to only clean them one time a day. So, we can leave them closed. I just want to throw that out to you.
I think we need to leave them closed.
And I agree from the standpoint that will limit the amount of time that people will stay at the playgrounds. It's kind of like what we did with the tennis courts, and in the beginning, keeping those bathrooms closed. You know, you're not staying there half a day and everything, so it will help limit the time on the playgrounds.
Yeah. All right, so then the next kids-related issue would be the Oxford Park Commission has, do we have those?
I've got some updated.
You do, okay, good deal.
Updated options.
you, sir.
Thanks, Seth.
And Seth, I'll let you take over and explain this to the board of what your Park Commission Board is wanting to do.
Yeah, so absolutely. Basically, we want to come and just give a few options of what we believe we can do safely, and then somewhat get a timeline, what y'all are looking at moving forward. So we've got kind of three options here on these 3 sheets of paper that I've got you. Option 1 would be walking only, and some things that we think we would be able to do. Appointments to be able to set, come in and walk between the hours of 9 and 4. They would last 45 minutes apiece, and at those last 15 minutes, we would go back through and sanitize and clean all that everybody had touched. One little change would be we would not use the actual walking track. We would make them walk around the perimeter of the basketball court, which would eliminate walking up and down steps, grabbing railings, grabbing the railing around the walking track. And stuff. So you just call and get your appointment, reservation time, come in and walk that part of the day.
And you'd have an hour or 45 minutes.
45
is that
minutes.
Right? Okay.
We did it where you could do reservations 1 time a day for that. I don't know that we'd get 20 people an hour, but I mean, 20 people in there I think is still a low number. We could take more, but I did it as I had saw the orders that had been written. But you see, you know, taking temperature checks, entry in the facility from one door, exit a different door, and just control the access coming in like that. So,
Seth, 20
Yes.
people walking, is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean, if we can take more, I think we can take more and still keep people distance inside the gym.
At one time, 20 people? Okay, thank you.
I mean, you walk a lot, so you know there's usually not 20 people out there, so I don't know that we're ever going to get to that number, but that would be the max that we would put on there. I do
What do you
think we could
think?
take more, but
I think that's too much.
That's, by reservation, I mean, you got 45 minutes, I don't think you'll ever get to 20 either, but you're there.
Yeah. There are times, because people don't have other exercise opportunities, so you may have 20 people. I think that's a lot. Jimmy, what do you think?
I'm going back to when you'd be breaking the governor's orders, with the limit.
Well, this is what Seth and I talked about, so advise us if I might have steered Seth wrong. I felt like the gym would go under the same, as a gym. I mean, I was saying that they should follow the same guidelines that we put in place for gyms across the community. I think 20's too many. If you're all walking at about the same pace or somebody's lapping everybody, you know, I don't know. I think 20's too many, but I also am not, that's not my specialty, is figuring out how to space them and what have you. But I don't, it's not violating the governor's order if we say that the activity centers, both of them are considered under the gym category.
now, Ms. Janice, one of the things we had looked at is having 2 perimeters set up for walkers, so you've got a slow inside lane, inside the basketball courts, we could put slower walkers, and then on the outside perimeter do that. So you're able to separate some slow from some fast walkers there.
And are you talking about both activity centers?
Right now, in this option, it would just be the new activity center, the Coach Al Center.
Okay. And people wear masks while they're walking?
Yes.
So, Seth, I hadn't seen this because obviously I don't have it. You just handed it out. But, are we gonna be voting on this separate? Because, I mean, are you talking about having anybody else in there while these 20 people are walking?
All right, so right now on this option that we're looking at, this would just be a walking track. This would not be utilized in free play. This wouldn't be utilized in anywhere else in the facility other than just walking. So no basketball, no volleyball, no pickleball, just a walking option as a safe start to opening the facility.
So that's what you're asking for, right?
Yeah, well, just in option 1, yes. There's gonna be 3 options here I've got,
If you'll
that
go
we
through
can leave
all
you out.
3, and then I think we can analyze.
All right, so option 2 that I've got in front of you, It's virtually the same thing. Of course, you know, we've got the curtains that can drop down inside the activity center, inside the Coach Howell Center. So what we would do is lock one side up. One court would be for walking. The other side could be for free play, which could be anything, except from pickleball to basketball, whatever we may have set up in there that day. Free play would be controlled by us as a way to be able to prevent too much gathering. So pickleball, there is some space that we could create. You know, we could let them shoot basketball but not necessarily play games to be able to play indoors. So that's a kind of a walk. That's kind of a hybrid model there, and those are set the same way, you know, 45-minute reservations, and folks that'll be coming in for that too.
This be a walk-up, or if you do need to make a reservation?
It's all reservation.
You know, well, I'll let Seth get through his third one, and then I'll tell you what my concern is. Go ahead.
All right, so option 3 comes back to free play, where we would open up a second facility starting at 12 o'clock, where we would have free play in the second gym, so the old activity center, and still using option 1 as walking, so we would have both facilities open. The difference would be option 1 with the walking and in the Coach Howell Center, we would still start at 9 o'clock in the morning, but the free play in option 3, we would start at 12 in the old activity center, running the same way. Still temperature checks, still hand sanitizer, still doing reservations, and everything else all the other ones have called for.
So a couple of concerns that I had. I do think that 20 falls under our guidelines according to gyms. I also think that 20 is too many just walking the circle of the courts of the activity center, but I don't have a number to propose to you. You know, I almost think that it's one of those things you might have to let it happen one day to see how many people can comfortably walk without it being, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, my concern would be everybody showing up at one time before their appointment, and you got 20 people shaking at the same time.
Well, what we've got in the regulations is we're asking people to stay in their vehicle until the hour comes, and then they walk up with their mask and stuff. I understand his, thing. I mean, I don't disagree that people are going to gather, but as far as presenting a plan to tell you what we would like for people to happen.
Well, and I appreciate you making an effort to have the buildings open to the public. I very much appreciate that, so I don't mean to sound like I don't.
So 20 people, if we'll go back to that, you may be very well right that may be too many, but I basically took, you got 4 sides that you're walking, so it's 5 people a side, and so you're looking at 100 feet to fit 5 people in. So that's how
Just depends on I'm thinking of the speed of the walkers and the different people walking at different speeds and what have you. But what I believe, again, anybody can cancel this out. What I think is that 20 does fall within our guidelines. And so what I would ask you to do is only schedule it for 3 days, see how many people come, and then just use your wisdom in determining 20's too many. I think we need.
Or start at 10 and go up, one way or the other.
Right, either way, but I mean, 20 does fall within our guidelines. That's so whatever, it's just too many.
Yeah, too many.
Okay.
And when we are using half of the gym for walking and half for free play, then 20 definitely seems like a lot.
I would not like to mix the age group that will be taking advantage of walking with the age group that will be taking advantage of free play. That was my biggest concern in talking to Seth. I think you either have to divide, if you're going to use one activity center for that, then walking is from 9 to 2 and free play is from 2 to 6, or however you want to do that. I would love to see them consider doing walking only in the Coach Howell Center and free play only in the old activity center, because you can still drop those curtain walls down and separate it, but you're not cross-contaminating kids and folks that, adults that want to come in and walk. I know that presents, then you got to clean 2 buildings and you got, I realize those are issues. My other concern, and Seth, did you just say that for people that want to come for free play in the afternoons, they have to make a reservation? Mm-hmm. Okay. My concern is that we had so many kids that would walk from Oxford Intermediate School to the activity center, and we just let everybody in that came. And so that's kind of become a thing, is, for a lot of parents let their kids walk there, which is why it's open. That's what we want to happen. And they walk there, and then their parents come and get them when they get off work at 5. we have a new school that's also in the mix now. I don't know how many extra children are added at that
They're too young.
location at Central, but they're not if they've got a big sister or brother in the grade that's above. What I fear is that we say it's open for 20 kids and 200 walk over there, and then you've got 170 kids standing out in the parking lot, gathered up, doing whatever they're gonna do, just being kids, and that's what concerns me probably. I think they will handle the 20 inside just fine. But I think that it's promoting everybody go to the activity center still, and I fear we'll have a lot of kids unsupervised.
Seth, have you discussed that migration from the intermediate school to the activity center with the school administration?
Not with the school, I have not.
Okay.
And another thing, to make a point, when Ms. Att and I were discussing this, is that we don't know what's gonna happen when they actually start back to school. And to help the school pinpoint an outbreak, I believe if we open an activity center, we'll add confusion to the mix for that age group. Not being able to pinpoint, did it come from the activity center or did it come through the school? Or is it being transferred from the school to the activity center and from the activity center to the school?
Right.
I think for at least 2 weeks until we can, see what's happening in the school, we shouldn't have the school kids coming in there after school.
I agree with you, and if I've misled you, the free play option and kids option wouldn't take place until well after school's in anyway, because that was what we had talked about, even playing our games at
But we got a
FNC.
letter from one of your board members that said they wanted it to start prior to school.
Oh, well,
So I just want to be clear that the board does need to give some input on when you would like it to start, and I had already shared with Seth, I feel more comfortable if the kids get back into school and we let that prove to be successful before we introduce another gathering opportunity. But I thought opening the activity center for walking is great. I mean, I think that serves the community well, so.
How about pickleball?
well, pickleball could, you talk about the most of their walkers being the senior groups or whatever, which is most of pickleball too. So if we did do that, we could limit, and I say limit, we could still drop the net and still have some pickleball courts, a couple pickleball courts, while we have some walking on one side of the gym too. Because the pickleball court's gonna take 4 people, so if you do that,
Would you
you've got
not just
8.
get dizzy? I mean, if you cut that in half and then you walk.
No, it's a basketball court. You just
Right.
walk the loop of a basketball court.
So we just don't wanna get too many people, like I said, that older people walking and some of the younger people, that's just too much.
It almost seems to me, and I know that you are being very cautious in only opening the downstairs so that you don't have the handrails and the whatever all, but if you're gonna allow anything other than walking, it seems to me that you'd have to consider how to let walkers walk on the track and pickleball folks play on the courts and not try to
So,
those together. I mean,
so how would we figure numbers like that? How would you like to see the numbers ran if that's the case? So if we've got 2 levels and now we've got walkers upstairs, pickleball downstairs, now are we looking at 40 or are we still staying at 20 inside the building?
I think it would have to be based on our plan, which is talking about our deal right now is that in a gym, they can have 10 participants to every 1 instructor. Isn't that correct? Yeah, and so that, you would have at least 2 employees there, so I was saying with 20 people, you certainly would be within your gym guidelines. And I believe that it is 10 per, and 50% occupancy, whichever is less. So, I would have to get Jimmy to advise on that, but.
Seth, that going upstairs to that walking trail, I don't see where there's that many surfaces for people to touch. It's the railing, you could hand people a Clorox wipe to walk up with that and then just open the door and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely, that can be done, and I realize that's not much, and it's around the track that people grab. I was just eliminating those surfaces, so it's not that I know it's way too much, but I just eliminate anything that you had to worry about them touching, contaminating. But, I'm open to open upstairs. It was just a way to have that much less things to touch.
Well, it would be better to have more space for 10 walkers upstairs and then just have 2 pickleball, whatever you call them,
I like that.
downstairs.
2 pickleball, that would kind of limit that to 8 people. If you had 2 pickleball courts, that's
correct.
8 there, and then you have 10 walkers upstairs.
Yeah, and then if you have two staff, you've met our, like, the gym requirement.
I mean, you can run with your reservations. If you get 20 walkers, you don't have pickleball. I mean, the first 20, some, or your pickleball fills up. I mean, you can have this going on at the same time.
And we can see, like I said, we can see how the numbers stack up, and we may go ahead and just say, okay, we'll take 4 pickleballers and 16 walkers, or we'll take 8 pickleballers and 12 walkers. We can work that.
So what do we need to do? I mean, I know your board will ultimately make the decision based on our input, so I'm not really sure how we proceed with this. Pope, what is your?
It is y'all do control how many people can go into your buildings, So
Right.
if y'all wanna put a limit on who's on the courts and who's on the walking, whether it's 20 plus 8 or 12 plus 8 or no more than 20 total, I think y'all can do that, and then Seth can work with his board, or he may already have the authority for his board to put in place whatever y'all tell him you think is reasonable. They asked this question at his board meeting is, or you need to come back to us. And I think Seth's view was, if it was within the guidelines and this board is okay with it, then his board is okay also. So I really think their board respected y'all's ultimate decision to limit the use of city facilities.
Okay.
That's how I understood. Is that right, Seth?
Yes.
Okay, so then I think we will, I didn't want to be presumptive and ask for a motion if what we needed to do was just, okay.
Yeah, I think this is our decision as part of our, whatever you call the plan.
Serving Oxford safely.
Yeah, thank you. I think that limiting it to 10 people on the walking trail at a time is good. And then 8 for pickleball downstairs at the same time. And limiting it to 45 minutes, everybody needs to wear a mask. And see how that works. I mean, we've changed this enough times that we could change this again if we need to.
Wear a mask even playing pickleball?
I've never played pickleball, so I don't
I mean,
know.
your social distance, I mean, you're
on opposite sides of
you're opposite side, you're spaced.
I mean, the governor's order says inside or outside. I mean, I think that would be a violation of the governor's order, not
Okay.
of what we have in place. Am I right?
I actually think he has a provision that says if you're exercising, if you don't have to wear that, go back and read it for sure.
Yeah, for some reason, I think that's outside, but I don't know. Whatever his order says is what we need to go by, so.
But upstairs, because people pass each other closely on the track, I think people do need to wear a mask.
Since it's just a walking, not
Yeah,
running track,
yeah.
yes.
It actually says, one of the exclusions is persons engaged in exercising in fitness and exercise gym or other sports activities.
There you go.
So the pickleballers will be okay.
Yeah, they are further away from each other than.
Okay, so park, well, I guess we should get a motion first on what, that was the motion, so is there a second?
Second.
All right. Anybody have any questions before we vote?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we're gonna come back and look at free play after school starts, a couple of weeks after school starts.
That was my assumption, y'all.
I think the schools need a couple of weeks to figure out what's going on there. You know, every school that opened so far has had cases the first week.
Yeah.
If we have kids going to the activity center after school, we won't know where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Or the school won't know where it's coming from.
So yeah, I mean, maybe we just go ahead and say at our first meeting in September, we'll talk about it again and see if we're ready yet, or if we want to wait 2 more weeks. Does that work?
Yeah. But
Okay.
Seth, the school needs to know this, and they need to tell the parents who turn their kids loose at, when school's out.
Yes, ma'am. I have, John's got a press release prepared right now, depending on what the vote was tonight, to be able to send out to the schools.
Great.
So he's got a
thank
couple
you.
of them already ready.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Not opposed.
I was like, yes, or your vote. Okay, thank you. Unanimous. Okay, so let me just recap where I think we are as far as, our park commission. I think we're clear, you're clear on that, Seth? Okay, and we are opening all playgrounds except for Avent Park, and we are not opening bathrooms.
And to make all that happen, I think what y'all ought to also do as part of the safe reopening is amend your 10th resolution to include the latest governor's resolution, which all it did was extend the last one. as far as-
Okay. Okay, I'm not finished though with all of our changes.
Okay.
But when we are,
Yeah,
we should
you do
amend
that,
the
and
10th.
You set an immediate effective date and extend the date until changed otherwise.
Okay, all right. So a few other things. M-Trade Park, it remains open, as you all know, and Alderman Bailey's motion at our last meeting was we said that masks would be required for anyone that was not participating in sports or in the game, and so Alderman Bailey included in his motion that we would hire Wood Security to be there to help with enforcement. After discussing it with Brad, and he's here if anybody has any questions, he feels like they would get the same response from the signage that they have up and from the announcements that they make every hour over the loudspeakers. It did not appear like, although the folks did what they were hired to do, it didn't seem like that was probably worth the money based on the results that it produced.
Well, that's good. If people are complying.
No,
Yeah,
they're
that's
not.
great. No, they're not?
They're not complying anymore with
Oh, gosh,
the
okay.
expense of security. It's just, it is difficult to get people to wear masks outside. It is miserable to wear masks outside, and I get it. It's miserable, but I think if we continue to enforce the spirit of the governor's order, which is we're sending it out to every team and to all of their families, members, what have you, that get their team emails telling them the requirements of our park. We have signs up, and we will have somebody at the gate checking to make sure they have on a mask when they come into the actual park, and they will make announcements every hour and utilize their employees as they can to do it, but don't feel like adding the additional security produced any real great results. And so, that would be my ask, is that we continue to enforce the exact same thing that's in place, but that we utilize employees at FNC Park instead of hiring security.
I know that's
Is
tournaments.
that a fair thing, Brad?
I know that's tournaments, but we've instituted all the same thing for our rec games once they start, so.
We found like the most effective way when we would play the announcement over the PA system, we would kind of like, we would have people look around, and then the people without masks on would be like, they feel a little shame.
That's right. A little embarrassed that they weren't following the rules, but, we just did not feel that it got a greater response by having the security do it rather than employees that are already at the park and what have you. We just
You
felt
might
like,
want to record Mama Mayor telling people to put their masks on.
that's right, put your mask on. So anyway, we need a motion though to change that, because that was part of the motion made last time. Alderman Bailey, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so you heard that, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. So do we have a motion then to amend the procedures at M-Trade Park to allow the same policy to stay in place, but to manage that with employees of M-Trade Park rather than hiring security?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right. And we still have, a large number of tournaments that now will transition from baseball to soccer in the coming weeks. And I would ask you all to please not rule out changing what our policy is at M-Trade Park as schools get back in place and we see, how that goes. I made my case for M-Trade Park last time, but I can't give it up. I hate that we're letting huge groups congregate, but I hope that we can reconsider it at each meeting as we move forward based on what happens in the schools.
When will the soccer tournament start? Is it right after the baseball is over? Is there any break?
So this weekend, it's very small, we're using maybe 2 fields, we have around 15 soccer teams coming. And soccer is a much different beast in my opinion, because it's a 30-acre wide open kind of space. You know, baseball's more, you're inside the fence per se, so, and then, the next weekend, we have maybe 10 more soccer teams, and there's a baseball event at the same time, which is around that 40-team mark.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
that's what we got coming up. And, in talks with the mayor, we're gonna keep an eye on everything, on how it progresses into September, and as this thing kind of keeps evolving, we'll update everyone accordingly.
Okay.
So let's go back, now, we set a limit for baseball,
We didn't.
but
That wasn't, part of the motion was not a limited number of teams. We went back and looked, we asked how many teams he had playing in that tournament, and it was 35, but we did not limit it.
we were good with, well, I mean, maybe we didn't limit it, but we were good with that up to this point. Are we gonna set limits, or are we gonna just leave them open?
I'll let Brad, I asked Brad what number means that you have too many folks as far as using 2 fields per quad instead of 4 and that kind of thing. I'll let him give some input.
Soccer and baseball going on at the same time. We just get bigger and bigger.
And the challenge of the soccer end, to me, is although you are spread way out, there's only 1 bathroom facility and 1 concession stand facility for all of the whole soccer complex, which concerns me.
Our soccer events that we have coming up they're very small in nature. So it's not like this large collection of soccer teams. I was at an event this weekend in South Carolina with my daughter, they had 200 teams, you know, you can tell it's a huge crowd, but, so our soccer events are very small in comparison to kind of the whole scale of the, however many acres the soccer fields are. I don't know if that answers your question, especially in the next coming weeks, a very, very low number of teams.
Explain to them how you do propose limit baseball for time, with your time slots.
Yeah, so, you know, the kind of the overall goal is to reduce a crowd at any one given time. And Bart asked me today, well, what exactly is that number of teams? And it's a very difficult question to answer, because you could have 100 coach pitch teams because their game limits are only an hour long. Whereas you could maybe only have 30, 14-year-old teams because their game limits are hour 45. So what we're doing is we're kind of establishing some time slots that we have to do that could accommodate X number of coach pitch teams or 7-year-old teams and 9-year-old teams, because of our time limits are so different. And we're gonna spread out all the fields like we did last weekend. We had 2 fields going per quad. We used some of our practice fields to facilitate the tournament. So we're just trying to keep to the overall goal of not collecting people at any one given choke point.
I guess I was thinking overall crowd, how many people are coming to Oxford? It wasn't, I know you can handle what's going on here and there and what's going on out there, but I'm looking at how many people are we bringing into Oxford for these teams, for these tournaments, along with our 15,000 we just added, along with our regular population. I mean, that was my concern, is how many people are coming to town from Arkansas, Louisiana, or Alabama, wherever they come from. That would be the number I want to look at.
I would say, you know, a good average, if you wanna say, you know, coaches, players, and parents, is around 30 to 35 people per team. That's kind of like a collective average.
So are you under the same governor's orders as the high school? Two people
No.
per-
He did them under different categories. There are 100 people per area.
But that's a good number, Rick. I mean, there's some are more, some are less, but that's a pretty safe.
And if you have 2 teams and they're about 35 people each, you're looking at 70 folks plus your umpires and your whatever all, and you're staying under that 100 per field is the general assumption.
So I think we were looking at, when I was looking at it, when I was thinking 35 teams, that would give you X number amount of people coming down. You put 35 or 40 teams there, and then you add 20 teams of soccer. I just look at, we're in mind, getting too many people traveling in and out every weekend.
Yeah.
Along with our population, along with our schools trying to open. I don't wanna get too big too quick. I'm okay with the 10 teams and the 15 teams, but when you throw 40 teams of baseball and however many teams of soccer out there at the same time, I'm getting a little nervous. When was that weekend?
Not this coming up, it's the 29th, so last weekend in August.
That's soon.
I mean, it's before our next meeting, so we've gotta make a decision tonight.
I agree with Rick about limiting the teams if we are really considering seeing what our schools are going to do. I don't know what that number is, but I'm kind of worried about 40 baseball and 15 soccer.
You know, one thing Brad and I spent a lot of time talking about this past week when I realized that the motion had not included a cap on the number of games was, you know, they did 35 teams, I think 34, something like that, on 2 quads. They did it the games were scheduled every 2 hours, which meant you've got about a 20-minute window for groups to leave and get there so everybody's not there at the same time. That seemed very manageable based on our conversation. There's a 3rd quad that they had not used, so if you added that 3rd quad in the mix, you know, I think what would be the most helpful to Brad, and correct me here if I'm wrong, because I built a clock trying to talk through it with him, with all the different age groups having different lengths of game times, and you don't know what brackets are gonna make, and if you've got an A and a B bracket, and then they meet in the championship games, and you said, I mean, there are lots of ways it could go. So really, he needs to get kind of a total number, which was closer to 70 teams, he was saying, that could be spaced out that way if you used all 3 of the quads and spaced them out the 2 hours and what have you, and then he just kind of has to back into it as far as making his schedule.
I'm fully comfortable with how he's scheduled. I mean, I know he's doing a great job out there. I'm not comfortable with putting 70 teams out there, bringing 70 teams to Oxford right now. I mean, I was good with 35, but if you had 35 and then another however many soccer teams out there.
So what is the number right now, Brad, on that soccer baseball combo weekend?
I can find out for sure, but we're right around 45, 50 teams, like total, you know, between
Baseball and, yeah.
Between baseball and there, and, I'll just say that baseball is gonna be Friday, Saturday, and soccer is Saturday, Sunday, so you have not everybody on all days.
And
You're
when,
talking about overall number of people in the
How many more baseball, soccer weekends are there?
This is the last one.
Last one.
Now, there may be one in late October, so.
I thought fall baseball starts soon, no?
Fall baseball will start back in September.
And then you'll have soccer.
But I was gonna say that,
So, well, we wouldn't have soccer tournaments going on, but if that's what,
Okay.
you know.
I just didn't know when your soccer tournaments cranked up.
It almost, just because of the different age groups and the different times of the games, it almost seems it's more of a capacity number than it is a total number.
Well, we were focusing on FNC or M-Trade Park. We weren't focusing on how many people we were bringing to town.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So when a team is through, they leave, is that correct? They don't hang around watching other games?
They definitely pick up and they're out and they're in the car and gone.
I'll give you an example. When the teams played 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, you know, there was like 5 hours between the first game we played on Saturday and the second game we played on Saturday, so we didn't, you know, and it was 95 degrees, so you didn't stay.
You didn't stay around?
People leave
Yeah.
after their game, and they don't stay in the car.
Probably went to a playground.
okay, so what are y'all's, Jason, John, y'all have any feedback on this one?
There's
I mean, I think we could talk about limiting it, but the truth is, you know, I don't know who does the soccer. I know Clay Ritchie who does the baseball. I mean, you run a risk of not even getting them there if you start limiting how many people they can have. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Brad can tell me.
Well, I mean, these teams are, you know, at this point, they're thankful to be playing, get out of venue, you know, to do that. So they've been, the teams and the participants and the moms and daddies who come, they've been pretty friendly with our guidelines. We have, and oh my gosh, this is crazy, you know, sort of deal. They've really tried to operate in the guidelines that were set forth.
We had 4 or 5 last tournament that, based on the governor's order that they had to wear masks outdoors, decided not to come.
Right.
I mean, they pulled out of the tournament because they were not willing to wear masks. Hey,
Bailey,
Jason
I
or
wanna
John,
mute.
somebody mute yourself.
That's Bailey. That's Bailey.
Is Bailey. So,
When's the cutoff?
but I was glad that they did. They didn't come and buck the system. They knew they didn't want to do it, so they didn't come, which I thought was great.
So the cutoff, that's what I was asking, when's the cutoff for that baseball, soccer?
Well, that one's done. That one's
Okay.
already out.
It's
and done.
closed, or, yeah,
We know
the numbers.
what we're looking at, that we've been preparing for.
Okay, so are there any changes, or y'all want to consider again 1st of September meeting, or what are your thoughts?
Let's talk again,
I say we consider again in September.
Okay, so the only change then is utilizing M-Trade Park for our enforcement security. Yeah. Okay, and then 2 other things that I wanted, do we need something else to tell you? Okay, I think we don't. Yeah, just make sure I didn't skip anything on yours. Jimmy, 2 other questions that we have gotten a lot from the public that I wanted Jimmy to address. One is the masks that have the valves on them, and the other is face shields in place of face coverings. And so Jimmy is the expert. I wanted him to address those publicly.
Okay, and I'm gonna read the statement directly from the CDC on the mask with the valves. Valves or vents is how the CDC lists them. Masks with exhalation valves or vents should not be worn to help prevent the person wearing the mask from spreading COVID-19 to others as a source control. That means that when they exhale, that valve or that vent opens and there's nothing blocking the aerosol from their breath or speaking from coming directly at the person they're speaking to. Like these masks, they redirect up and to the side and down, where the valve masks do not redirect. It's a direct opening out to the person they're speaking with.
So it's basically a mask that's for the individual, not for the other people.
Correct. Those masks are for the individuals. They're not there to protect the individuals from breathing something in, not from exhaling.
Okay, we've just gotten quite a few questions about that. We've also gotten questions about, can I wear a clear shield instead of a face mask?
Clear shields should not be used. They are not effective. The CDC has very limited studies on them, and they say they do not act as a protector. Under certain circumstances, they can be used if you're dealing with a hearing impaired person that needs to lip read, but they recommend more wearing the face masks that have the clear shield built into them. The city has actually been able to purchase those. They're available for purchase to the general public and everything, but the use of the shields are not approved by the CDC because they really do not limit the transmission, the aerosols.
So somebody can wear a shield if they want to protect their eyes, but they have to have a face mask covering their nose
Correct.
and mouth.
The CDC's actual statement on it, the shields are for eye protection to prevent droplets and mist getting in the eyes, but if you wear a shield, you should also have a mask on under the shield.
Right.
Thank you, Jimmy. Does anybody else have any questions, Bart? Is there anything that I'm forgetting that we had discussed changing?
Not as far as plan goes,
talking about the, yeah, I want to make sure we had it all covered before we did that. So then I would ask the board, yeah, John?
I was just gonna say, I meant to bring it up before, but about these playgrounds, I think it'd be a good idea for Seth or somebody to actually put, notes or signs up stating that we are not cleaning these, that they need to clean the playgrounds, and maybe even cite some things like from the National Institute of Health that it can stay 3 days on stainless steel and, you know, things like that, because, you know, I've read about it, and I think that we need to put the warning signs up on the playground.
And I'm sorry, John, I meant to bring that up. The CDC does recommend that signage does go up at playgrounds if you open them up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Will you help us work on that
Yes,
tomorrow?
I will.
And one other thing is Chief McCutcheon is here, and we have seen an uptick in large parties across town, and I know.
No.
I know. Can you believe it? And so I asked Chief McCutcheon just to give us an update of kind of what they're seeing with, you know, y'all have, I'm sure, seen that we have added light up flashing signs to the square to make people aware that face coverings are required inside and outside in public spaces. And so we think we're getting that word out. The university has been pushing that out as well. But I wanted Chief McCutcheon to give y'all kind of an update on what they're seeing.
Thank you, Mayor. For the month of August, we've conducted 335 compliance checks. Of those checks, we have written 13 citations. One of those citations was to a business for being over the occupancy load, and the other 12 were occupancy violations at residents, which turned out to be loud parties or noise violations.
Do y'all have any questions specifically for Chief McCutcheon? So that's, you know, there have been 12 citations for being over the occupancy level, and those aren't just in businesses. Quite a few of those are at personal residences, apartments, condominiums, that kind of thing. So that doesn't mean there were 13 businesses cited. There were
Correct.
12 of those were actually in personal residences. And, you know, it's so important. I know that we have got 10 to 15,000 new residents that have just returned or maybe here for their first time. And it's one of the things that makes our community such an amazing place is the energy and excitement that comes along with 3,000 or 4,000 excited 18 and 19-year-olds. And that's one, you know, it's something that we love, but we need for the Ole Miss students to partner with us. We need for everyone to take personal responsibility and to know that we all want the same thing. We want to get back to what we love about Oxford as soon as we can, but we won't do that if the students do not partner with the community to wear face coverings and to avoid large groups and to practice social distancing. It's the only way that we will get back to the things that we all miss and love. So we do encourage and hope that the students that are arriving will partner with us. Yeah. And we will be very strict in our enforcement of large gatherings when we see them and are called about them. And we do not want to write tickets, but we do want to change behavior. And in doing so, we will write tickets. And so I want you to be shocked if you have a large party and are cited for it. It's an expensive ticket, but it's one that's very easy to avoid. So anything, Chief, that...
No, we're working with the university to try to educate the students, and I think they're going to back us up on the violations as far as student conduct. Our downtown district is working with the owners, and with new students coming in, we picked up on this weekend, there's a lot of new employees. So a lot of things that we have put in place over the summer, we're having to go back and retrain.
Right, yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
So
yeah.
our staff is training those bouncers and those doormen on what are the requirements, what are our expectations. So I feel like you'll see a different pattern down there begin to change, especially this week. So they're spending a lot of time educating.
Good deal. Thank you. Thank y'all for all you're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
This is not fun work to enforce, so we appreciate your help and partnership with us.
I'll bet you never dreamed you would be enforcing face masks and social distancing as a police officer.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, if not, then what I'll ask you to do is to consider amending our 10th resolution to include the motions that have been made regarding playgrounds and M-Trade Park. I think those are the only two motions that were made and changed.
And to include within it the latest executive order
Right.
number 1518, which extends all the prior ones of the governor. And Bart suggested it be made effective immediately because the governor's extension went into place yesterday.
And Mayor, also the activity center.
Right, the Activity Center Return to Play, Phase 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there someone that would make that motion as Pope so eloquently stated?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all for bearing with us through that, and we appreciate our businesses and our citizens for helping us get through these very unpredictable times. All right, this is the second reading and public hearing on a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 18, Section 18-71, definitions to add subsections A through D, to add sections 18 through 78, keeping of vicious dogs to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Oxford, Mississippi. Pope.
Well, we found ourselves in the same place last week. We were sort of in a hurry. Everyone has this in writing, but I can read it. There are 4 different sections. 1 defines a vicious dog. The second is determination of a vicious dog by the court. The third is the keeping of vicious dog and talks about the specifics of the enclosure and the structures and the requirements. And the last section is the penalties for determination that you have a vicious dog and have not complied with the ordinance. I know Dr. Atnow has an issue that she wants the board to resolve about what liability insurance you all wish to require once you have had a dog that is determined to be a vicious dog and you're keeping it. And she said you can find it anywhere from $0 to $1 million on other similar ordinances to this one, so it's really a board call.
Yeah.
The other things that we clarified since the last time were there doesn't need to be a top on the fences. That's been changed. Janice, there was 1 or 2 others that I'm overlooking. It was the insurance, the top, and 1 other maybe.
Yeah, there was one other. I'm trying to remember what it was.
But anyway, I'm happy to read through this real quickly in case the public needs.
Hey, Pope, I do have one quick question, what you just mentioned about the liability insurance. So, no matter how much that we say they have to have, would we, because we are actually implementing an ordinance, would the city be, let's say something tragic happened, could they come back to us since we have an ordinance and we did not make the owner of the vicious dog have enough insurance?
John, I don't know the answer to that, but my answer off the cuff is no. This is a requirement. I mean, people violate our ordinances all the time, and we don't catch the violation. Our failure to catch a violation, unless it's deliberate or reckless or other, almost never brings liability upon the city.
Sure.
Okay.
Our citizen researcher, Leslie Walkington, said that the average claim for an attack by a vicious dog results in a lawsuit that yields $46,000. And I looked over some of the other cities, and Boonville has 25,000. Richland, Clinton, Pelahatchie, and Delo have none. And Lafayette County has a vicious dog ordinance, and the county is 100,000. So I don't know whether we want to do somewhere in between, like 50,000, or if we want to do 100,000 like the counties.
All right, so I've got a question. If the county has a vicious dog ordinance, why are we just not piggybacking off of their dog ordinance? I understand it's in the city limits, but it's also in the county.
Well, that would apply to anything, Jason. That's a county law. They won't come and enforce. And also, it has to go to court. For a dog to be declared a vicious dog, it's the municipal court judge.
Doesn't it have to go to court? Does it have to go to court in our vicious dog ordinance for it to be declared vicious?
Yeah, yes, it does. We don't do it, the shelter folks don't do it, it's the court that does it. If somebody's dog or person is attacked by a dog, the first time it happens, they should file charges, and then it goes to court, and the judge decides whether that dog is a vicious dog. And if it is, by the court order, then they have to follow all of the items in this ordinance.
And Jason, I appreciate your question. I understand what you're asking, but there are a lot of laws like this where it may be that Janice's answer right there is the whole reason for it, is because if we're requiring you to go to a court, the justice court judge may not want to hear a city one, and I don't think is required to, and we put in here that the municipal judge hears these matters, as they do all other municipal ordinances, and that may be the answer.
Yeah. And Rusty has communicated with our judge and with our prosecutor, and they're good with this. They understand the need for it. It's unfortunate that we have to do this, but you know, there's been a lot of attacks by dogs that I was not aware that there were so many. The police department deals with some of them, and the animal control person deals with some of them. And some of them are repeat incidents, and that's really what's kind of scary. But we got some emails. Most of the people who emailed us are very much in favor of this ordinance. But some questions came up. People said, well, people shouldn't let their dogs loose. And that's true. I don't know if everybody knows, but we do have a leash law in Oxford. You can't let your dog run loose. They've got to be on a leash, or they've got to be confined to their fenced yard. And there was another, and if there is a loose dog running around, we have an animal control officer who is available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. And all you have to do is call her, and the number is 832-7634. And maybe the Eagle would put that in the paper. And after hours, after 10 p.m., if it's an emergency, you can call the police department and they will deal with it.
It's not just loose dogs, it's loose animals.
Loose animals,
Yeah, and-
No, it's loose dogs.
This is a vicious dog ordinance.
Yeah.
No, I know this is, but she was just saying if you have a loose dog, she was going into another ordinance.
It is just dogs.
Is it just dogs on the loose?
Yes.
So cats can run
No,
anywhere they want to?
our ordinance says cats may roam free.
It does.
Vicious cats ordinance next month, Rick.
There are not too many.
No, I got that one. So if you have a cat that's roaming free and it comes into your yard and your dog attacks somebody's cat, now you got a vicious dog.
Right.
No. It's a good question, but there is a definition for a vicious dog and a finding. And so if a cat runs in and your dog attacks it, then you'll be arguing to a judge, I imagine, that my dog is not any dog with a known propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack without provocation, to cause injury to or otherwise threaten or endanger the safety of human beings, pets, or domesticated animals. I think you would probably be telling the judge it didn't have that propensity. I don't know how Judge Nielsen will look at that, but ultimately that's why we added the provision instead of just the propensity to attack, where the police would have to make the decision. What happened here, you get to go to the judge and say, no, this isn't a vicious dog, it doesn't have a known propensity, it got in a fight with this other dog or this other animal, but here it was provoked, here's how it happened. But yeah, I mean, if it is a dog that's regularly killing animals that come through and the judge says, no, I'm sorry, I don't find it that way, then it could be determined to be a vicious dog. But there is sort of a fail-safe there with the judge. To make exactly the argument you're concerned about.
Yeah, if it's being provoked, there's even
That's right.
something in here, if the dog is being abused, tormented, or otherwise provoked, and it bites, the judge makes a decision on whether that dog would then be declared a vicious dog, and probably wouldn't.
No, that was actually the first two questions. The first question that I had from the person was, who's gonna make the decision? Part two was, what's up with the cat ordinance? I mean, we're controlling dogs, but cats are roaming everywhere.
Well,
My third question from some somebody in an email was, how did we pick the age of 14 on the section? Vicious dog shall mean any dog that attacks a person over the age of 14 who willfully trespasses. Why would it not be younger? I mean,
Why would the age of the person matter if they were
Right.
attacked by the dog?
Willfully trespasses.
well, I'm right, but, I mean, somebody the age of 8 knows better than to walk, usually.
No, I think you're reading that wrong. It says any dog who attacks a person over the age of 14 who willfully trespasses or commits another tort upon the real property of the dog owner.
That's an exception
Yeah.
to the definition of a vicious dog. Exceptions to the vicious dog shall include any dog who attacks a person over the age of 14 who willfully trespasses.
Gotcha.
And I think that it's if it's a somebody under 14 who comes in the yard, we still don't expect dogs to attack them. And we still expect that the judge may find that has a propensity to attack. It's not a exception to vicious dog.
Yeah. And the other question that I wanted to clarify, somebody said, you can't be picking on certain breeds of dogs. Well, this ordinance does not. It is not breed specific. We're not getting into that. Any dog can be a vicious dog. And indeed, you know, there's a huge variety in the vicious dog reports of the breeds that turn out to be defined as vicious.
I've got a question on the insurance. Stated that the county has $100,000 in liability. How much of that is going to be medical coverage?
I have
And
no
should
idea.
we put a amount on medical coverage? Because you may have $100,000 worth of liability, but only $10,000 of medical coverage.
No,
I think it's specific.
the way it works in a lawsuit is what answers for your medical and other damages will be liability insurance. In a lawsuit, you don't claim insurance based on whether it's medical insurance or liability insurance. It's just liability insurance. It's different than a auto incident insurance that you differentiate between medical and other liability.
Hope the other
Well, I
change.
mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jason.
I'm going through this issue right now, and we have a liability coverage, but our medical is only $10,000. So,
But is
we
that
need to look
related
at
to
that.
a car, without getting too personal, Jason?
No.
Yeah,
No, that's not.
I have never seen a differentiation in any contract or ordinance, criminal ordinance, between liability and medical insurance. I've never seen that. Nor in the counties, nor in any of these that we looked at related specifically to vicious dog. I'd have to research that. I've never seen that applied.
Pope and the mayor, in an effort, since it's a second reading, do we have to figure out what insurance we want tonight? Since otherwise, I mean, I guess we're not voting on it.
But I think as this is the second reading and public hearing, you know, if you change something a lot, then I think
Yeah, I mean,
you want to seek input again. I mean, I don't,
I don't know that we're changing a lot, we're talking about it right now, people know it right now, so.
Yeah,
If we make that decision on the next meeting.
Well, my thought on the $100,000, I realize the county, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have a leash law, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, but I mean, most of their homes are even a lot more spread out than we are in the city. I would think we should have at least the same amount of liability as they do when you would think that if someone actually has a vicious dog in the city, they'd almost be more apt to have an encounter.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that's a decision for y'all to make. I know exactly what you're saying, John. And remember, this is not a general city ordinance. This is only after a judge has made a finding that you have a vicious dog and you make the determination that you wish to keep it under the requirements in the ordinance.
Yeah, which I think, I agree, John. I think 100,000 should be what we do. And the judge also, he can declare the dog vicious, and he can also decide that the owner is not responsible enough to keep the dog if it's, you know, if it has bitten people several times, or you know, or they're not taking care of it or whatever, and he could have the dog turned over to the shelter. But anyway, 100,000, is that what we want to do, folks?
I'm good with it. I'm good.
Okay. All right, we'll put that in there.
Mayor, remember tonight is a public hearing on it.
Right. One other thing though, Janice, I think the other item you had emailed about was, in 18-78, section D, about the signage.
Oh, yeah,
That
we
was
just made a minor change in the signage so that it complies with our sign ordinance, and there won't be any, you know, problems with
It
that.
requires that you place a sign, and I think Janice mentioned this last meeting, that we didn't want it to be either huge or
Yep.
tiny, and so. Same
Yep,
design.
that's great. I just remembered that was
Thank
your
you.
other item. All right, so is there anyone here who wants to comment on this vicious dog ordinance? Because this is a public hearing.
And I just thought of one other thing.
Yep.
We do, in our animal and fowl ordinance, we do have a section, because people were saying, well, what about all the poor animals that get abused? There is a section about animal abuse and neglect, where we have certain steps that can be taken if somebody sees an animal that's not being properly cared for. It's a different section.
Yes.
I do have one question.
Okay, you might want to come up so that people that are on the video can hear. And will you tell us your name?
Sure, my name is Leslie Walkington.
Okay.
Hey, Leslie.
Okay, so if we can look at section 4, number 2.
Okay.
So section 4 has to do with number 2. If the court finds that the owner of a vicious dog is unable or unfit to provide the necessary safeguards to prevent the animal from causing further harm to a person, pet, or other domesticated animal, the court may order that the animal be permanently forfeited and released to the city animal shelter.
Yeah.
So in the original ordinance that I had submitted, I had some clarification on what happens at that point to the animal. There were different options.
Right.
And so I think this last part of the sentence leaves a little question, like what happens next? And I didn't know if you want to deal with that now, or if you just want to kind of, you know, deal with it later. I didn't know if that was going to be an open-ended question there.
I don't think we need to deal with it at all, because in our ordinance, it talks about animals that are surrendered to the shelter or animals that are picked up as strays. It is up to the discretion of the organization that is operating the animal shelter. They're the experts. They might, you know, they might try to retrain it and adopt it out, or they might euthanize it. We leave it strictly up to them.
Okay, so that was my thought, was if the animal has been deemed vicious and the court then takes the animal away from its owner and it goes back to, or it goes to the animal shelter, for example, I know that Mississippi Critters has a no-kill policy, but I also know that they do euthanize animals if they can't rehabilitate them.
They do.
So then they would make that decision then.
Yes,
okay, that's just what I wanted to kind of clarify and make sure, because I know that then that just kind of leaves it open.
Right.
If they're
Are we
good
going to give a
buddies-
vicious dog to someone to?
Somebody, yeah,
Right.
they won't do that.
I just want to make sure that if you know, the dog wouldn't be adopted out, because if it's already been deemed, it couldn't be adopted out, right? It just didn't clarify.
Well, actually, it hasn't been deemed that it can't be adopted out, it's been deemed to be a vicious dog that the owners can't take care of.
Yeah.
I don't think it's likely that it would go to the shelter and they would decide it could then be adopted out, but they could decide that the real problem was the owner couldn't take care of it under the guidelines, and that an owner who could keep the dog. I doubt that'll ever happen, but as I said, we do entrust the power of determining how to handle vicious dogs and all dogs, rabid dogs, sick dogs, well dogs at the shelter, and they do that every day.
Okay. So that was my only question, just wanted to clarify that.
Leslie, thank you again for all your help.
You're welcome, thank you, Dr.
Yes,
Ansel.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments on this ordinance? Okay, then we will have a third reading and vote at our first meeting in September. All right, so third reading and vote on a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration, Article 8, Sections 2-236, Composition and Terms of the City of Oxford Code of Ordinances regarding the Historic Properties Commission. Kate?
Hi, everyone. So tonight we're having the third reading and vote on these changes to the Historic Properties Commission ordinance. Since the second reading and public hearing at our last meeting, we have not received any public comment or made any changes to the proposed ordinance.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Kate. Third reading and vote on a proposed ordinance for case 2642 to amend the City of Oxford Land Development Code. Ben?
Thank you. And like Kate, this is a third reading and a vote on the modifications to the Land Development Code. We have not received any comment. We did not receive any comment at the public hearing. Therefore, we recommend your approval.
I move we approve it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Revocation of subdivision plat amendments for case 2632, Evergreens Phase 2.
The board approved a final subdivision plat for the Evergreens Phase 2 in November of 2018, and at that time, Heritage Development was the owner of all the property within the subdivision. After the city discovered that the Heritage Development had changed the location of the site's stormwater detention facility, Heritage sought an amendment to the subdivision plat in May of 2020. In its application, Heritage represented itself to be the owner of all the property within the subdivision. The amendment sought to remove about a half an acre from Lot 3, turn it into common space for the purposes of stormwater detention, and then also move the access easement from the south end of the property to the north end, or the north side of the new common area. Because we had no reason to believe any other property owner would be impacted by the amendment, the Planning Department and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the plat amendment. The board approved the plat amendment at its regular meeting in June 16, 2020. After that amendment, staff was contacted by a member of the First Oxford University Methodist Church that the church actually owned Lot 3. Staff confirmed that Heritage had conveyed that lot to the church in February of 2019. And state law allows municipalities to approve subdivision plat amendments only when the applicant secures the written permission or written agreement of all property owners directly interested in or adversely affected by the change. Because the church did not provide its written consent, the plat amendment was invalid as requested, and staff recommends the board revoke its earlier approval of the amendments to the Evergreens Phase 2 subdivision. To the extent an amendment is needed to conform to the conditions on the ground, Heritage will have to come forward with a new application to the, and it will include the church's written consent.
And Ben, if the church doesn't send a letter, are they gonna be required to restore the property to the way it was prior to?
Heritage Development, or yes, ma'am. At this point, they're operating under a temporary certificate of occupancy. So I think they have a few options.
Pope, do you have any?
No,
comment on
you got
this?
it right. It's our understanding they're working with the church to get their agreement regarding, but it gets into other issues about who's gonna maintain the pond that's redrawn and the easements for entrance, and so all of that, we need to make sure they've got an agreement and we know how they'll be maintained and repaired going forward. So it matters both to us and to the other property owner who had not given their interest and agreement, consent.
Now, I make a motion that we revoke the approval of the subdivision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, request approval for preliminary and final plat for case 2639, University Shopping Center.
And this property is the University Shopping Center. It's located at the northwest corner of University Avenue and Bramlett. It's the shopping center with Don and Dale's, the social liquor store, buildings that contain Armed Forces Career Center, Little Caesars Pizza, et cetera. The entire property is approximately 5.14 acres, and it's all zone traditional neighborhood business. The applicant is requesting a preliminary and final plat approval to create a one-lot subdivision. University Shopping Center Lot 1 will measure approximately 0.392 acres, and it complies with all of the subdivision requirements of the code. At the July 13th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval with only the condition that the preliminary plat and final plat be approved by the Mayor and Board of Aldermen. And then earlier this month, the Planning Commission approved the site plan for Origin Bank. So we do recommend approval of this subdivision.
All right. Any questions?
Hey.
Yes.
Ben, I got a question on it. I can't tell by the drawing, but is he still planning on keeping the frontage of the buildings in the same direction?
Yes, towards University Avenue? Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's all I was asking. Thanks.
Yes.
Any other questions?
To approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. Request permission to advertise for proposals for tree removal at existing and future rubbish sites. Amberlyn.
Good evening. Well, we have just about filled up our existing site, so it is time to prepare
for round two.
Round two closure and open the new site. 3.5 acres on the existing site. We would remove those trees, which would allow a dirt supply for closure of the existing site. The 10 acres on the new site will keep the trees out of our new site and will allow funding to go towards new construction. So ask your permission that we advertise for proposals of tree removal.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, great, thank you. Request permission to accept a grant from the Mississippi Office of Highway Safety for alcohol and impaired driving for FY 2021 in the amount of $580,345.08.
This is our DUI grant that we apply for every year.
Yep. Do we have a motion?
So, second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to accept a grant from the Mississippi Office of Highway Safety for alcohol enforcement for FY 2021 in the amount of $112,356.97.
The same, a part of our training grant from the DUIs.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to accept a grant for the Mississippi Office of Highway Safety for traffic services for FY 2021 in the amount of $13,272.
Seatbelt enforcement.
Motion made.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Chief. Consider a contract for professional services with Precision Engineering for the Slack Road Lift Station Improvement Project. Rihanna?
Yes.
You're good.
As stated in the memo, we want to hire Precision Engineering for our lift station project on Slack Road. They'll manage the construction at this point, which I'll be asking about in the next agenda.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, request permission to advertise for bids for the Slack Road Lift Station Improvement Project.
We are ready to take bids. The project was budgeted for this fiscal year and is in the next fiscal year budget as well.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to advertise for the Bramlett Boulevard Pedestrian Improvement Project, which will use federal aid funds and is known as Project 400 letters and numbers in a row.
Yes. So this is our sidewalk project, the pathways identified several years ago. We received federal funds through MDOT for this project. And once this is complete, we'll have sidewalk from Belt Boulevard all the way to Avent Park.
So from Notting Hill neighborhood.
Yes, all the way.
And South 18th extended all the way to South 18th to Bramlett to Avent Park. That's awesome.
Yes.
Excited about that. All right. So is there a motion to advertise?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Consider a contract for professional services with Hunter Porter for traffic engineering services.
Yes, Hunter has been providing engineering services for us for some time. Last year, we had a contract with him. It lapsed in December of 2019. We would like to have a new contract with him, and he will be overseeing our construction of our Oxford Way project. He is an independent engineer, has low overhead, and worked for a number of years with Charles Sullivan, who is the father of traffic engineering, if you ask me.
All right. Anybody have questions about the contract?
Motion made to approve. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Consider change order number 2 for the South Lamar Azalea Traffic Signal Project in the amount of $10,175 for the addition of a handrail.
Yes, when we widen and put the sidewalk over our new box culvert, the sidewalk was closer to the edge of the box than we would care for, and we wanted to have that handrail added as a safety measure. So we request that change order, and there are funds available.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, consider change order number 3 for the wastewater treatment plant flow equalization project in the amount of $5,407.60.
Yes, and this is a very small amount compared to the overall contract size, but because we've had larger change orders, I just want to come to you for this. We want to encase the electrical wiring that we're putting underground in concrete so that it's like we have elsewhere throughout the facility.
We approve.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, consider a project for concrete ditch repairs adjacent to St. Andrew's Circle, Rihanna.
This one I'm going to slow down, it's a little bit more involved.
Yep.
The existing concrete ditch at St. Andrew's Circle, a portion of it collapsed in the early spring. We were notified by the property owner. In investigating, we realized that we feel like the work they were doing on their site, they had removed some privet hedge right there at the wall, had done some grading. We felt like that contributed to the collapse of that wall. We started researching it more and confirmed in the Board of Aldermen minutes that the city actually only owns 2/3 of that concrete ditch. We've got minutes that report their adjacent property owner had deeded the city their part of the ditch, but this property owner, not the current property owner, but the original, did not want to do that. And we just, it's been kind of handed down through city engineers that the owner did not want. He wanted to keep that ditch, that portion of the ditch. The current property owner did not know that they owned 1/3 of this ditch, did not realize. Obviously, as any homeowner, they've got to share a ditch with the city of Oxford is complicated. We approached them about the repairs, given that we did feel that some of the work done by their contractor contributed to this collapse. We also note the wall is 35 years old, the channel is 35 years old. There have been other repairs made to it in the past. So it is, as we're seeing more recently, nearing the end of its lifespan. So I've presented to you 2 options. One is just to repair the actual vertical panel that collapsed, and that can be done for around $5,000. The other option is to go ahead and replace the entire channel along that frontage, that portion. It would not be all of the concrete channel, but it would be along that property line. It's about 80 feet, and that would be around $25,000. I've talked to the property owner about paying for their 1/3 portion for the repair, and they are willing to do that. They feel like they would like to do that. They would ask that the board would consider allowing them to deed that ditch to the city, and the city accepting that, as we have.
Leanna, I'm sorry, how much did you say the total was for all that 80 feet?
So to replace it, to repair just the vertical wall is around $5,000. So that's,
I heard that.
That's the repair. And then to completely replace it would be around $25,000. It's actually a little under $25,000, and that would be to replace the vertical wall and our 2/3 of the ditch. So the property owner is willing to participate in the repair portion. I didn't feel like it would be fair to ask them about replacing the 2/3 part of the ditch that belongs entirely to the city. So there's a couple of options there. In evaluating the funds, first of all, I feel like there are funds available in our professional services. Earlier in the spring, we reevaluated our budget to save costs and reduce in many areas as we could. But even with those reductions, I think we can still have the money to do this. I think it makes sense in the long run to go ahead and completely replace this ditch. We spent money 6 to 8 years ago, Bart could tell you exactly when, on the other vertical wall that's ours. The bottom of the channel, and you saw in your board pack, the bottom of the channel's got cracks in it. It's just, it would make more sense to go ahead. We will be in there repairing it continuously, and we'll still have to replace it, I think, in the next few years. So there's a couple of options. Either just do a simple repair. There's also to accept the funds from the property owner, which is around $1,600 as their contribution towards the repair that we do feel like originated with their property. And then also a consideration of accepting this property. And I would come back to you in the future to accept the property. We would need to get a description, but just to have your intent. The property owner does feel like it's important. They want to know that the board is willing to accept that in the future. So,
Rihanna, what about this, this issue of a new sewer connection?
So that is another issue in there. We're trying to determine where they're gonna get their sewer service. Their existing sewer, they thought ran through the back of the property, which in the country club neighborhood's not uncommon. There are a number of private easements. So it runs from one property line through another person's property and ties into the main connection. So that's not uncommon. We've been in a couple of cases where people have sued each other about that. So what they were wanting to do is to connect to the sewer main that's located right there under that ditch. So there would also be a portion of the ditch, if that's where we allow them to have a sewer connection, that we would have to dig out no matter, in order to provide them a sewer connection. So if we do, whatever the board decides, we will work to get that sewer connection fixed first. But that is another reason that I do think it makes sense to go ahead and replace, if possible. And I know that...
So, Rihanna, if we just repair it, is this a drainage? I mean, does something drain here that we might have a chance to get some sort of grant later to replace it?
We, because we've got the sewer line there, it could be eligible for NRCS funds in the future, as we've seen with other areas. One thing that we did find out last week, we had an NRCS request on a different project, is there has to be a qualifying event in order for those funds to open up, and we have not had one recently enough for them to be able to approve our other project. I am praying that we don't have any more, just because a qualifying event is going to be some type of disaster, and I'm done with those. So we've had enough in the last 2 years.
We have. The last for
yes.
10 more.
So the question is, when would those NRCS funds become available again? And that's something that we don't know. We would have to wait for a qualifying event.
When did this happen?
So this happened in the spring, I want to say February.
Would that not be the qualifying event?
It's not, they can't go back. They have to, in order for us to have, to get funds, it's gotta be tagged, the application, the grant, all that has to come in with a current event under review, so we couldn't go back. We had hoped to on a different sewer project on 9th Street, so.
Okay, any other questions? What would you like to do?
Move we approve.
At what
That's
level?
the question, Jason, which one?
Well, I think we need to fix it all, at this time, so I say do the big project and then get the 1,600 from the owner.
Okay, so then your motion is to do the $25,000, completely redo that ditch in front of the property. Is that?
That's correct.
A fair assessment? Okay. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And
Okay?
So, Rihanna, I have a question though. So we could have repaired that thing from the picture I'm looking at for $5,000, but a handrail cost us almost $11,000.
Yes, it's the difference in basically the ditch repair would have been basically a amped up vertical sidewalk. We would have tied some rebar into the bottom of the channel and turned it up into a panel along that wall there. So, yes, versus the forming of the handrail. And we got good quotes. I mean, that's gonna contribute to it as well versus the change order.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Consider a request from a property owner for a revocable license to install a privately owned storm drainage force main under Tyler Avenue.
Yes, and this one is more interesting, and we've got engineers from Precision here if you've got questions about the design, but the house at the corner of Tyler and 9th Street has flooded for a number of years. I think I've been going out there since 2011. I think Bart had history prior to that perhaps. Property owner has made a number of investments and improvements to try to stop the flooding or help it, but they haven't been able to be successful. They hired Precision Engineering to come in, reevaluate everything. Precision has developed a plan where they take the existing pumps that they already own and operate, and they will run a force main which will pump the water that collects in they're going to install a new detention in their driveway. So they're going to install something like you would see at a store in their driveway is how bad their flooding is, a large underground detention pipe. Then they're going to pump that water in a force main down the road and onto a private property into a junction box. So it's the same concept as our sewer force main, and then it's just pump fluids, but instead of being sewer, it'll be storm drain water. And so the idea is that instead of just pumping, what they're doing right now is just pumping that water from the house straight back into the street, and then it flows straight back into the house. And so they are not able to get any relief. I mean, they can't keep up with it. The idea is that by pumping this water further down and into a junction box down the road, they are able to get ahead of the rest of the water that's accumulating in the street, and they're able to start making progress. So they'll get their water that's coming into their property out and away and ahead of the rest of the water. And I've got Lee Mize is here for questions about it. It is different. So the request is for a revocable license for this main to be under the street. And normally I'm very opposed to things going in our street. I have a lot of concerns about that, and I'm very guarded about it. This one, first of all, I want to see how it actually functions. I think there could be, the idea is novel, and I'm interested in it for some applications for the city in the future. So I kind of really want to see what it functions like, what it looks like. I've got some recommendations that they have a locate wire attached to it so that we can locate it in the future, so we'll know where it is, we'll be able to find it. They are responsible for the maintenance of it, and that would go with the land. So if they sell the house, that responsibility still goes with it. And then that we have to approve the final design, and what we're looking at right now is right now they're showing an 8-inch pipe. They may change that to a 6-inch, and so that's the reason I note that this is conceptual. They were still looking at the size of that force main when I was submitting this report. And then we also do want to confirm that where this water is going, that they have written permission from the property owners. And we will want to see that ourselves, because it will be going into a privately owned and maintained junction box on a private property. They've talked to the property owner. The two owners know each other, and so they've had conversations and appear that they're willing to approve this, but we will want to see that document as well. So, and then of course also doing the hydraulic analysis to make sure that we are not creating issues downstream, as usual. It is different. I think I support the request for the license, and we've got Lee here, and Heather may be outside due to numbers, but to answer any questions about the design.
This sure is different.
It is.
175 feet, and how much of that is going to be in the street?
So 175 feet of it will be in the street, and then there will be another maybe 75 to 100 feet that will be on private property. And it'll be underground, so they'll trench to install it. Because it's a force main, it doesn't have to have, there's no elevation. It can be, you know, just, we'll get it deep enough that we're not worried about hitting it when we're doing our work, but, it is. And so they'll trench right there outside of the curb line, but similar to a water line installation.
So how disruptive is that gonna be for the church and for other people on that street?
I think it will be disruptive for parking for some time, and we can manage the work and the street closures as we do normal, as far as telling them that they can't have it closed on Sundays or weekends, or, you know, as we normally do when people are asking to work in the street. We can manage it with those conditions. I'm not sure how many people park, how many property owners park in that area. I know on Sundays it's heavily used, and game days, obviously, it's heavily used. And so we would, of course, expect the street to be fully open and functional on those situations. And there may be some others that y'all are thinking of.
Where is the nearest storm sewer to that property?
Well,
No, I just,
there is a storm drain right at the property. But it's just not sufficient to get the water in there, to pump into that. We don't feel like they've looked at it, and it's not going to make a difference in trying to get the water away from the house further. So
I lived next door to that house for 8 years when I first moved to Oxford. And I know that they've done so much work on that corner more recently, but I don't ever remember those folks. I think it was Dr. Hooper that lived there. I don't remember them having those problems back then. Do you, Bart?
All that garage and that little pool thing they have in the back, all that was added after the fact. So that's the low spot, that's the spot.
Oh.
Where's legal at on this?
I think you can do it. I think all you're doing is granting a revocable license. I think it's more an engineering question. And the only other legal suggestion I have is really more practical for engineering, and that is make sure we keep this in some fashion that we know it's there. We've had easements under our road that were put there 100 years ago, and we have no idea how they got there, why. They're not really legal concerns.
yes, and that is one thing we wanted to do coming to the board. It is also something that our GIS department, I guess our GIS technician in development services, we've been gathering data so that he will be able to incorporate all this data into our GIS system. And I think in another year, he'll have us to the point where we'll have a Google image and we'll be able to scroll over. And we've been collecting data about the history and what we're doing. And so I do think we'll have a better system in place in another year to track.
So the water line's gonna have to be moved?
No, ma'am, we won't move the water line. We won't have to. It'll be installed so that it's not in conflict with any of our utilities.
Okay.
Any other residences right in there?
So
Flooding?
that are reporting flooding? No. I think it's this one. The adjacent property owner gets a lot of water that goes through his property. It goes over the curb and goes through his property, but he's got a ditch on his property, and his house is up, so he doesn't get flooding.
Brianna, you may have said this, are we requiring that they allow others to tie into it if others in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years could utilize it, or will it only be capable of handling it from that one?
We're not. So the structure that they are putting in place, and Lee could talk about the size of the structure, but they're going to place subsurface detention under their driveway. And so where they're installing it, someone else would have to come in. I mean, it's not. Their sizing, it's substantial, and this is about an $80,000 investment that they're taking on, but it wouldn't be large enough for anybody else to tie into.
It's okay.
Would it not be a good idea to do a little oversizing here? I mean, we're putting something into a city street that if another neighbor says, oops, we've got something going on, now what do we do? I'm just thinking years down the road, way after our lifetime.
I think the answer to that, and I think we ought to say it at this meeting, is if we ever had some need under that road for anything that we can imagine sitting here in 2020, it's revocable. We could tell them it's coming out, and we might not be able to get them to get it out 50 years from now.
We could cap it, and it would cease to function.
Yeah, but
So-
we could, if it's only a license, we could stop it under our streets, I assume, correct?
Yes.
So there is that, right? That's a
Yes.
good question.
And Brianna, I don't really know how a force main works. Is it a pump?
Mm-hmm.
And is it powered by electricity?
So they'll have a pump in there, it's in there, I think it's installed in their basement now, is that correct, Lee? Where their,
It's in two separate spots in the yard. We're gonna combine them and put them in one sump pump together.
so, and they are they electric generated, do they have, battery backup or anything?
They got it, I don't know that.
Or fuel backup? Not sure about that part.
But as far as maintenance, if it needs to be maintained or replaced, you have to
So,
dig up the street again?
The pumps and all of that will be located on their private property.
Oh,
The
okay.
only thing that'll be in the street will be a pipe, just an 8-inch
gotcha.
pipe. That's
Okay.
all that will be in the street. That's,
So the
yes,
chance that we have to dig up again for any reason is slim.
slim, yes, ma'am,
And any failure of the pipe will go back to the homeowner.
yes.
Right, and I would recommend that y'all ask that, the license actually be reduced to writing and approved by council, because I think we would put in there that we're not responsible for maintenance if it fails to be maintained, or for any other reason, we may require its removal. Just so all of that's very clear, when the next homeowner buys it, we say, we've had enough of whatever problems it causes us coming out, we've gotta have that ability, or this.
Love the way you're thinking.
Absolutely.
With those conditions.
With those conditions.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Okay, all right.
Any opposed? All right, I would ask the board to consider an executive session.
About 40 more of those.
Could I have a motion to consider executive?
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the board will now consider an executive session. Thank you.
Hey,